Okay, so let's start. Hi everyone, and welcome to this first ZenPlot webinar. During this session, you will learn how to create and elaborate charts without ZenPlot, but also how to integrate them in your presentations for further use. I'm Jules, and I'm working at Adinsoft as ZenPlot Product Manager. There is a lot of different data visualization software, and ZenPlot is not a software program to create, for example, dashboards, but you can more see it as an elaborate chart builder. Its biggest benefit, besides the large amount of visualizations you can create, is that you can export your chart in vectorial format. This format allows you both rescaling the viz without losing in quality and ungroup each element of the graph to easily customize them in a graphic editor, for example. At the end of this webinar, we will see how to manipulate vectorial visualizations in your presentation. For example, if you give your charts to a designer's team before you include it in a report, they will probably appreciate the vectorial format SVG. At this webinar, we will create 3 visualizations using CATA datasets. First, let me briefly explain to you what a CATA dataset is. So, consumer-based methods which deliver sensory product characterizations are gaining popularity. A CATA question, CATA means check all that apply, is a versatile multiple choice question in which respondents are presented with a list of words or phrase and asked to check those which best describes the product they are tasting. In our case, let's take an example with 119 consumers tasting 5 different apples. Consumers must taste the 5 apples and each time check the attributes that best describe it and give it an overall liking score between 0 if they hate it to 10 if they love it. They are also asked to check all the attributes that would match with the perfect apple, which we will call an ideal product. Let's explain more in detail this little example. So the consumer number 43 should taste the 5 apples, and when he tastes the apple 257, he checked firm and juicy. So here in our raw dataset, you can see that there is 1 variable for consumers, 1 for product, 1 for liking, and 1 for each of the attributes that are here. I didn't represent everything. And we are writing a 1 when the attribute is checked and a 0 if the attribute isn't checked. The ideal product has no liking score because we suppose he would worth a 10. So let's have a look at the entire raw dataset. You can see that each observation is a test. And there are 6 rows for each consumers, 5 for the 5 apples and 1 for the ideal product. With this dataset, it's possible to perform different statistical tests and exploratory methods depending on the information we are looking to obtain. So here I prepared 3 datasets, which are stemming from this big one, raw CATA. I used XLSAT for some calculations, but you don't have to to have an XLStat license to use ZenPlot, you can create all those datasets or many others with the methods of your choice. So I will introduce you to each dataset before creating the associated visualization into ZenPlot. Let's start with the first one, CATA bar chart. It's a simple dataset with two variables. The first variable is all the different attributes, and the second variable is their percentage of checked. That means that juicy has been checked 63% of the time. And let's make a bar chart with this dataset into ZenPlot. So I will open ZenPlot. Here we go. And so I will describe you a little bit the Zen Plot interface. Here is the home page. You can add a new project. Here you've got the latest project you opened. Here I don't have any project in my Zen Plot for now. You have some inspirations, which are projects that you can go through and see how layers have been created. And there are also some tips in video, so how to create a project, a visualization, etc. So let's go in the project space. Here, I have no project for now, but I will create the first one. So to create a project into ZenPlot, you need to import a dataset. It's the first step. And one project can be made of one or several datasets and one or several visualizations. Let's add our first project. Here I can rename the project. Let's call it CATA project. And I'm asked to select a file, so I will select the file that I've just shown you here. I click on select a file, webinar, and I will go to catabarchart.csv. Here it is, and I click on continue. Here, this area is a preview of how your dataset will be imported into ZenPlot. And those settings, if you click on apply the settings, it will refresh the preview, so you're sure to import your data the right way into ZenPlot. Here, my variable checked is a quantitative variable, so I let it in quantitative. And my variable attributes, it corresponds to my observations. And observations are used if the variable is corresponding to the observations names, which means every element of this variable should be unique. Here it is the case. There is only one time juicy, from, crispy, etc. If it's not the case, the variable is a qualitative variable, not observations. So here the summary tells me that I got 15 rows and 2 columns, so it's okay. I can click on continue. My dataset has been imported, and I'm entering in my new project. Here I am in my project CATA project, and I can start creating visualizations. This button is to navigate through all the visualizations of the project. Here we only got one visualizations. This button is to apply different themes. This button is for the axis options. This for the legend options. And the right side of the screen is to create layers, and that's the first step to create a visualization. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on add a layer. And here we want to create a bar chart. I can choose between those 8 layers, and I can combine them to create a more elaborate visualization. let's take the bar chart layer. I'm selecting the dataset I want to use. Here, CATA bar chart. My X coordinates, I want attributes. My Y coordinates, I want the checked percentage. And the Y transformation, here there is no need to specify anything because I only have one occurrence at each time. So if I take the sum of astringents or the minimum or the maximum, it's always 7. So I'm just going to check. I'm just going to take the sum, confirm. And here is my new layer. At the right of the screen, you can see that there is a new layer that I'm going to rename corresponding to my bars. And these options are the options for this layer. And there is one option bar for each kind of layers in ZenPlot. So here, if I want to increase the bar width, I just have to make this. And now, if I want the labels at the top of each bars, I need to create a new layer. So that's what I'm going to do. The layer, here it's going to be a labels layer. I'm selecting the same data set with the same coordinates, and my labels are not my attributes, but my checked percentage. The label positioning is centered, and so my labels appeared. You can see that if I'm switching layers, the option bars is updating because there are not the same options for every layers in ZenPlot. Let's rename the layers labels. And I want to customize a little bit those labels. So first, I want to remove the borders. I'm going to apply a thickness of 0. And I want to increase the size of my labels. Let's take 15. Okay. I will also remove the X grid because it's not useful here. Here we go. And so you're probably wondering why I'm showing you how to create a bar chart, which is the most basic chart in every kind of data visualization software or graphical software. What I want to show you here is how you can enrich your visualizations into ZenPlot. For example, I know for this dataset that the attributes which have been checked more than 50% are significantly more checked than the others, and those which have been checked less than 10% are significantly less checked than the others. So I want to represent this on my visualization. What I'm going to do is I'm adding a layer annotations. And here I can either add a text or an image or shapes. Here I'm going to add a rectangle shape, which will highlight the attributes that are significantly more or less checked than the others. And I have the hand to specify exactly the shape that I want. I can also customize a little bit the border of the annotation and the filling color of the annotation. I'm going to also apply a little bit of transparency so we can see through. And so this is one example of annotation you can make into ZenPlot, but you can also add pictures or text or different kind of shapes. And also, if I come back to my bars layer, here all my bars have the same color. But every characteristics of every element of every layers into ZenPlot can be linked to any variables of your datasets. And that's a strength, because imagine that I'm gonna, if in my dataset I want to add a group variable, or to add elements that I know it's gonna be important to understand my dataset, I can link all these variables to elements. For example, here, if I take the filling options, I can link it to a variable attribute, and it will automatically generate the legend. And here you can specify the color that you want. It's the same with the color, with the border thickness, the type, etc. So here there is no need to do this for this data visualization, but the strength of ZenPlot is you can link any characteristics of any layers to any variables. Let's take it in uniform again. So now I'm going to save my project. And if I come back to my project space, I can see that it has been created. And now I got a preview of my different visualizations. I will open this one. Now we're gonna create our second visualization in our project. So I will show you the dataset that we are gonna use. There are three variables: consumer, attribute, and checked proportion. So here, compared to the first dataset, we got the information of checked proportion for each consumer and each attribute. And with this dataset, we want to create, for example, a heat map. Let's do this into ZenPlot. To import a new dataset, I'm clicking on the new dataset button. I'm selecting the file. Continue. And here there is a warning because my consumer variable is not a quantitative variable. Those are identification numbers. And so it's actually a qualitative variable. And it's not an observations, because you can see that the consumer one is not unique because it's repeating for every attribute in the dataset. So it's a qualitative variable. My attributes are qualitative and my checked proportion is quantitative. So let's continue. And here at the bottom, you can see that there is a new dataset in my project. So let's click on visualization and create a new visualization in my project. And here we go from scratch again. So we're going to add a new layer, heat map. I'm selecting this time the second dataset with consumer as X coordinates and attribute as Y coordinates. And I will change the color of the grid so you can better understand what's happening here. So for example, this cell form for consumer number 1, it corresponds to this row of the dataset. But now every cell of the visualization is with the same color, and that's not helping us. So what I'm going to do is I'm clicking on the filling options, and I want to link this filling option to a variable, which is the checked proportion variable. So it will automatically create a gradient. The minimum value, so the minimum color, will stand for the 0 checked proportion, the maximum for the 1 checked proportion, and the mid for the median. And so you can see in a blink that firm, juicy, and sweet and crispy are attributes which consumer checked a lot. And if we save it and we go to the first visualization, it corresponds, like juicy, firm, and crispy are the most checked attributes. So I'm coming back to this visualization. Let's remove the borders. And the problem here is that the labels are overlapping, and we don't want that. So I'm going to go in the axis options, text, X labels, and I will apply a little rotation and decrease the size of the labels so they won't overlap. And the same for the Y labels. I'm going to apply a little rotation too. Here we go. And so here our visualization allows us to understand that most of the time our consumer agreed altogether, because there is no line that is red or yellow on one side and blue the other side. So it means that globally our consumers think the same way about those apples. I'm going to save the project, and we're going to start the third and last visualization, which is the symmetric plot visualization. Here I have not the time, sadly, to explain you more what a PCA is, a Principal Component Analysis, but this is what I used to create these datasets. And what you need to understand is it creates two new variables from the raw CATA dataset, and those two variables allow us to understand almost 90% of the global variability in our dataset. So here the first variable is name, and there are either products and attributes. Those two variables are from the PCA, and this variable is a group variable indicating which rows are products or attributes, or which one is the ideal product. Let's import it into ZENPLOT again. Continue. Here my name variable is my observations, because every element is unique. F1 and F2 are quantitative, and the group variable is qualitative, so everything seems okay. I can continue. My dataset has been imported, and I will create a third visualization. So everything starts with adding a layer. Here I'm going to add a first layer, which is a scatter plot layer. Every point will be one row of my dataset. As X coordinates, I use my F1 variable from the PCA. If you want to know more about PCA, there are tutorials on the XLStat Help Center, which show you how to process a PCA with the XLStat. And I'm going to select F2 for the Y coordinates. Confirm. My points are displayed, but it doesn't help much because I don't know which point is who. So the first thing I can do is to go to my filling options and link the color to a variable, for example, the group variable. Here I know that the yellow points are the attributes, the red points the ideal, and the blue points the projects. But I want to know which points is which kind of attributes or projects. But before, I'm gonna not display the grid. And I want to also customize the axis range, because for this kind of visualization, it's important that the 0 is the center of the visualization. So I will customize it and go from minus 1.5 to 1.5 for the x-axis, and for the y-axis, I want to go from minus 1 to 1, for example. And the solution I have to create labels is, as for the first visualization, add a layer and choose labels. Or for the scatter plot layer, we got an option here, which is add labels. And it presets automatically the creation of the label layers with the observation variable as the labels. So here is the name, and I want my label position to be adjusted, not centered, because I want to prevent the labels from overlapping. Confirm. My labels are displayed. I'm just gonna remove the border. And now I will customize my text options. So I want to increase a little bit the size. And also I want to link the color of the labels to the same variables that I used for the color of the point. So this is the group variable. You can see that each time I link something to a variable, it updates the legend. And here in the legend options, I got a history of what I've linked to a variable. Here I got the text color of this layer, visualization 3 layer 1 here, and the filling color of visualizations 3 layer here. So I will just uncheck the text color because it's the same information here between those two elements of the legend. So I will just uncheck text color. And the last thing I want to do in this visualization is to identify the origin and the axis in the x equals 0 and the axis in the y equals 0. So I'm going to add a layer, annotations. Here I can add a shape. This time I will add a segment shape. Draw it barely with the hand and then specify the exact positioning of the annotation. Also, I would like to customize a little bit this segment, a gray bar, and I will do the same for the x-axis. Now we're good, and I also want this annotation to be at the background of my visualization. So all I need to do is to switch this and in the background. And let's save this visualization. Oh, I forgot the title of the axis. Here was F1 and here F2. I will save my visualization. And so now my project is done. I got my 3 visualizations that I'm done customizing. So I will export the visualization. And you can see here, I check all the visualization. You get the 2 different export formats. The first one is vectorial format, SVG, or PNG is the standard format for an image. Let's take the SVG format to show you the interest. I'm going to go on my desktop, CATA project, here. Let's imagine now that in my presentation, I want to add my visualization. I just have to drag and drop it. And the first advantage is, even if I resize the visualization, I won't lose in quality. Like if I zoom in, it's still very clear in both increasing or decreasing the size. And the second interest is you can ungroup it and do the last slight adjustment that you need to do directly in your presentation. So here I can drag and drop each little labels. I could also take a point and change the color of the point. And so you have the access to each element of your visualization. The last thing I want to show you in ZenPlot is if you want to share your project with your colleagues, you can just click on File and Export as ZenPlot project. And here, I will save it in the same folder than my visualizations. And if I go in my project and I delete the project, I just have to import a ZenPlot project, this one, and it appears in my project, so I can open it and see the different visualization in it. Open it, and there are all the visualizations, the layers, the data sets which are available. If I want to apply different themes, here is the ggplot themes or Seaborn. So that's how you can collaborate with your project in ZenPlot. So I think that's everything for now. Thank you for your attention. I will try to, if you have some question, I'm happy to answer. So if you have any question, please feel free to contact us at support. I'm writing in the chat, support@zenplot.com. And I encourage you also to go to our website, zenplot.com, to download our free trial if you want to try out ZenPlot. It's available for 15 days and it's for free. So if you want to try ZenPlot, that's the best way to get the trial version is to go on our website. Thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to contact us at support@zenplot.com if you have any question.